So it's been a while since I made a video about my favorite manga series of all time, and things change because I read new things. The last video that I made, I'm pretty sure that at least half of these series won't be there, and I like to switch it up a bit and make things new because this is 2014. I'm gonna try and read a whole lot of different things, mainly Berserk here, big runner-up Berserk. I'm not far enough into Berserk to say that it's one of my favorites. I'm really loving it, but definitely runner-up Berserk. I can say that the next time I do one of these videos, Berserk will definitely be up there. So starting off with number 10, we've got Meathead no Kimochi, which is a story by the creator of Gantz. Now, this is very different from Gantz, and it's very short as well. You can read this in one sitting. Unfortunately, it's not licensed in the United States. Hopefully someday, just because you can put this out in an omnibus, and that'll be it, because it's so short like that. But the story is about a 25 or so year old boy or man who is a hikikomori, and he stays in his room. His father takes care of him. He hasn't even seen his father in years because he does not leave his room. It doesn't really go much into depth about why he's such a shut-in like that, but it's more about the current time for him, and the only person that can take care of him is his father. But then one day his father dies, and then he's left in the care of his supposed stepmother, which is his father's girlfriend or newlywed wife. I forget which one of the two it is, and she's actually around his son's age. I don't know how he managed to pull that, but there's actually a bit of a twisted love interest with them because he's never seen her, she's never seen him, and I'm not even sure if she knew of him or not because she wants to help him, but at the same time she knows that she can't really get too close because she'll hurt him worse because he is actually interested in her. And it's a pretty good story. I definitely recommend you to check it out. So moving on to number 9, we have Rosario Vampire. I have reviewed the anime and the manga in separate videos. I will have them linked in the description section below, just the same as all of the other series that I have. I haven't reviewed number 10 yet. I plan on getting around to that sometime, but Rosario Vampire, much better than the anime. Personally, I like the anime. I liked it just because it's easygoing. You can just sit back and enjoy it. There's a lot of fan service and things there, so if you're in the mood for that sort of thing, then you can enjoy it. But with Rosario Vampire, the manga, it is much more of a serious shonen series, and there's a lot of fighting here. So the basic setup for Rosario Vampire is that Tsukune, a young high school boy, is scheduled to go to a monster school by accident. So he goes to the school, and everyone's monsters, but they look like people. So what's really interesting about this is that every person here is a different type of monster, and it's cool to see people transform into their monster forms and then fight each other because each of their monster forms has their special abilities. This series is more like a shonen harem romance comedy with monsters, and the anime of it, the biggest problem with the anime was that the main character was so weak that his friends had to handle all of the battles for him. All of the women had to handle the battles, which there's nothing wrong with that, but he is the main character, and it's more like a shonen series in the manga because he does actually handle a lot of his own battles, but it's not just him alone, it's him with all of his monster friends fighting together, and it is very enjoyable. Moving on to number 8, we have Chobits, which is one of the very first manga series that I have ever completed. This was really enjoyable for me. I really like the anime. I do have a review of the anime and the manga together in one video. This is very close to the anime, however, it goes maybe one episode past the ending of the anime, and also it takes out a little bit of filler from the anime as well, and certain things here that were more important in the anime, they're better fleshed out, and they're better pace within the manga, I feel. So the story of Chobits is Hideki Motosuwa is moving into Tokyo to go to college, and he's very broke. He's a college student, and he needs a computer. He doesn't have one. This is in the future where they don't just have regular computers. They have those, but they also have androids in the form of humans called Persicoms, and he randomly stumbles into a Persicom on the street somewhere that somebody had thrown away, which just so happens to be this girl here. Looks just like a girl right there. So the story of Chobits is a romantic comedy where Hideki Motosuwa, his relationship with Chi, his Persicom, changes throughout watching the series because at first he's more of like a father figure to her because her hard drive is pretty much a blank slate and he has to teach her everything, and this is actually really funny because she is completely clueless on everything. Another great thing about Chobits was that it left you with a lot of moral complications here that really made you think about things such as human relationships with human dating another human, or with humans dating these Persicoms, and it really made you think about, is love real even if it's with an artificial being? Moving on to number 7, we have Genshiken. Genshiken was actually, I think, the first manga that I started collecting. This goes really far back with me because the anime, I also reviewed the anime and the manga. I think I did it together, but this series, it's one of these series that I can go back and watch whenever I'm feeling down or whatever. It'll make me feel better, it'll make me feel happy, but at the same time, I'll really envy a lot of people that have this sort of lifestyle in Japan. Genshiken is about a group of college students who have a club where they get together and talk about anime, manga, video games, so it really looked like they were just a group of friends, and the story is involved with their everyday life, and it's not the most eventful story, but at the same time, you do mostly care for these characters, and it is very character-driven. Moving on to number 6, we have Akira. For the longest time, I wanted to know the secrets of the Akira story because I watched the movie, and if you watch the movie, you're going to be left with a lot of questions that you will not have answers for until you read the manga. Reading the manga filled in a lot of the blank holes for me, and it really made me feel like, okay, the movie itself of Akira, sure, it's this critically acclaimed, great anime movie that still stands up to this day as being very beautiful, but the story in itself is very lacking, and they should have made this into maybe like a 12-episode OVA and covered the complete story of the manga, but that was a different time. The story of Akira is actually pretty complicated. It's going to be hard for me to summarize this, but it's basically about these children that were experimented on, and they had these mental powers, and then there was one of them that was so strong, he was actually godlike, he had god powers basically, and then we have another character here, Tetsuo, and he is starting to be experimented on as well, and he's finding out that he has these powers, and we're seeing what he does with them. That's kind of the setup for the movie, but then there's extra things in the manga, such as a lot of character development. This is very character-driven, because you get to see and learn about a lot of people, and see a lot of people change. So moving on to number 5, we've got Rurouni Kenshin, which you're probably surprised to see this so low on my list, because it's one of my favorite animes of all time, but the manga here, there's a lot of other really great manga out there, but Rurouni Kenshin, it's a really good shonen anime about a samurai. I kind of feel like deja vu here because I just reviewed the manga, so you should probably already know what it's about. If you're a fan of anime, you know what Rurouni Kenshin's about, but anyways, it's about a samurai who was an assassin who went back on his ways, and he's no longer killing anybody. He's carrying a reverse-bladed sword, and he's trying to save everyone in his path, and at first it's very episodic, where there's a lot of changes and smaller arcs in there, but then as you continue throughout the story, there are larger arcs where he'll try to save the entirety of Japan and possibly the world as well. So moving on to number 4, we've got another series which is probably going to surprise a lot of you if you've seen the previous favorite manga video, because this was then number 1, and I'm sure everyone expected me to say this series because I am wearing the shirt. It is Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei. Now, what happened with this? Because it was number 1, now it's number 4, there's a big mental block around the series for me, because I actually emailed the company that makes these, or that licenses these, and I asked them about how long it's going to take for them to translate, I think, volume 15, or what is it, 16, the newest volume out of the series, and they responded and told me that they probably aren't going to do anymore because it takes them so long to translate it, because there's a ton of text in here. If I can just find something real quick, there's a ton of text here. You probably can't read what it says, but there's a ton of text there, and it's really small, and Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei is actually famous for doing this. He'll give a reference to how something relates to society, and he will give all of these reasons of how it relates and how it's all backwards and messed up, and then at the end of the book, there's a whole lot of references as well to a lot of the things they say, because this really revolves around Japanese culture, and if you don't know about it, this teaches you everything that you need to know, so you can also learn a lot about Japanese culture with that. But they said that it takes so much time and money to translate these that not as many people are actually buying them, so it's further back on their priority of manga to translate, and I felt really bad about that, because this is one of my go-to series. Whenever I'm feeling bad, I go and read any given chapter of this, and I really love it. Some of these are some of my favorite chapters out of all of manga, but I just know that once I finish it, there will be no more. Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei is the story of a very pessimistic and observant teacher who pretty much picks at society and Japanese culture in the most part, but he also references other cultures from around the world occasionally as well. And what's interesting is that all of his students in his classroom are very different, and they all have their unique problems to them, and he deals with them and their problems, and it's not really something that I would find to be motivational. It's actually funny. Whenever there's a manga or a series about people with a lot of problems, it could either be that they're trying to help them with their problems, it could be that it's a very depressing story, or it could be really funny, and I found this to be really funny. It's not depressing or anything, even though the teacher tries to kill himself numerous times. I found this to be along the same lines as It's Not My Fault I'm Not Popular or Watamote, which is another series about a girl with problems that is actually funny, unlike other more depressing series about people with the same problems, such as Miteru no Kimochi or Welcome to the NHK, or series like that. Speaking of these depressing series, moving on to one of the most depressing stories that you will ever read, No Longer Human. I didn't review No Longer Human. I thought about it, but I didn't know what to say. Even if I were to write out a script, I would end up spoiling something, or I would end up leaving so much of this out and not doing it justice, because No Longer Human, it's a very complex, very deep, and very dark story to it. No Longer Human is the story of a wealthy boy who can't really fit in with society. He never really understood people, and they kind of frightened him. So to deal with that, he becomes the class clown and everyone laughs at him, but then that's not actually his personality, so he doesn't understand people or how to deal with them. And then as you're reading the story, you see him actually using a lot of women for, not just for sex or anything like that, but for other things such as money, because he gets kicked out by his family. And see, already I'm going into things that change within the story, because it's such a short story. It's only 3 volumes long, but so much happened that you really need to read this, and you can't find this online. I've tried, because the artwork is so beautiful here. I tried to make banners, and I tried to make wallpapers and things out of it, because it is very beautiful art here. And I almost spoiled it because I wanted to show you something, but it's really beautiful. And if you were to look at this online, you're not going to find the right version. There's an older version of No Longer Human, which is only like 1 or 2 chapters online, and it's not the same story. So moving on to number 2, this is a series that I was going to put number 1, but the only reason that I did it is because, to me, it's very depressing. Welcome to the NHK is the story of a hikikomori who is a dropout from high school. He's been shut in and kept away from people for 4 years now, and then he goes along and he meets other people, and he will meet this girl Misaki and also his next door neighbor Yamazaki. They are both great characters, and it's not just about him and his problems, because every character in the series has their own problems. In the manga, a lot of the characters from the anime that were mostly afterthoughts, a lot of the side characters such as the Mouse Road character and also her younger brother and a few other characters as well, they're kind of afterthoughts in the series, but they're focused upon more within the manga. A lot of these other characters are focused on more in the manga than they are in the anime, and also the novel as well. A lot of them don't even appear in the novel. Welcome to the NHK is very depressing if you can relate to any of these people and understand their problems from having dealt with them personally. And also there's a lot of dark comedy here as well. It's not completely depressing, because if it was, then that would be pretty bad, but then there's a lot of comedy here to pick up the pace and really lighten the mood at times, because it's not just one depressing story. It's actually a roller coaster of emotions, from feeling good to laughing a lot to feeling bad to feeling worse to feeling worse to feeling worse to feeling, you know where I'm going from there. But it's not just one plain emotion throughout the entirety of the series. Moving on to number 1, what could it be? Because all of the ones from the top of my list from the previous video, they're not here anymore, and it's actually something that I don't even own, unfortunately, but that is Shigurui Death Frenzy. I really love the series. It was one of the highlights of my manga reading from 2013. That was actually the highlight of manga. I started reading Berserk back then. I didn't get very far into it, but I really enjoyed it, but this was the overall top highlight out of that entire year. I actually made a review of Shigurui Death Frenzy, the anime and the manga together in one video. So the basic setup for Shigurui is that it's set within the Tokugawa period in Japan, and it's very heavily based in history, and a lot of the characters here are actually historical characters. Not the main characters, but a lot of the side characters are actually historical. But the main characters here, there are actually 2 main characters, and you can view this either way. Some people prefer to have one character as being the main character, some people prefer to have the other character as being the main character, and everyone will have their one definitive character. You usually like them both. Everyone that I know that has read this series or seen this series likes both of these characters, but everyone has picked their favorite. So the two main characters, Seigen Irako and Genosuke Fujiki, they actually start off in a rivalry. In the very first episode, in the very first chapter of Shigurui, we see them fighting against each other with mutilated bodies. One person is blind, he's crippled, another person only has one arm, and this is actually in the very first episode and also the first chapter. It's no spoilers, it's actually foreshadowing because it actually goes backwards in time, and you see how all of this unfolds because that very first chapter, that very first episode, are actually things from the end of the story, which is only in the manga. So anyways, that's my top 10 favorite manga series for right now. Of course, next year's list will probably be a little bit different once I get Berserk on there. But anyways, leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what your top 10 manga series are. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later.